I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years, and today I have no special guest. He is the author of the book The Travelers in Omnibus, no other than Mr. Travis Sivart.
Well, thank you, Daniel. That's a heck of an introduction. I'm thrilled to be here.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Travis, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Of course, Travis I. Sivart. You can find me in all the places under Travis I. Sivart. Fun fact, the last name is the same as the first, but spelled in reverse, so it's pretty easy to remember, pretty easy to find. Um, I've been writing since I was, very small, making stories, writing. First published about 25 years ago, I guess it was, and started publishing my own books, self publishing in 2013. And since then, I've published something along the lines of, I think it's 44 books and there are three or four different names because, you want the children's books separate from the adult themed matter and that sort of
Yes.
thing. So, yeah, I've been around.
Mr. Travis Sivart, thank you so much for sharing your books to the world. So, how does the concept of cross dimensional in enhance the narrative's exploration of different worlds and realities?
I love connecting my books. And I write fantasy, I write science fiction, including steampunk and cyberpunk. And I wanted to join the worlds, which I did before I even started writing the books. I have one character named Jack Tucker, a very plain man, and he can travel through time and space, though he doesn't believe his time as a scientific linear. And so he found a place that he can use to travel through one timeline. But if you go far enough in any given timeline, the world changes so much. It's now a different world. It's no longer the same world. Look at the Jurassic era of our own world. The continents were different. The air was different. The viruses were different. It was a different world. And he's done this also. But now in Travelers Inn, it starts out very fun, very fast, very witty, and it starts out in a fantasy world. It's four books, though. And book two moves you forward to a steampunk Weird West world. Book three moves you into a cyberpunk world. And then book four, all of them collide. And we get a lot into the main character's head there as the thing that's been threatening his traveling in through the other books finally rises up and he has to face it, as well as his own dark secrets and shadows.
Interesting dark secret, Mr. Travis. So, in what ways does the inn's ability to traverse time and space impact the storyline?
Well, that's a great question. And the inn will attract people that Jack didn't call into the inn. So the inn kind of has a mind of its own. So it pulled in other people that end up later in the story turning against Jack and trying to take the power of the inn away from him, though the power of the inn is just an extension of his own power. So, yeah, the inn is a character in itself, and depending where it goes in time and space, it will change its interior and exterior appearance to fit into that era. And it's also created beings within itself, within the building, to serve it, to take care of it, to repair it, that are not directly under Jack's purview or command, or however you want to look at it.
Hmm, definitely interesting. So, how did you integrate steampunk elements into the various settings within the series?
The inn will bring people within itself. And there have been certain characters in the inn throughout all the books and even previous books, reaching into some of the other series that I've written and published. With the steampunk, though, when we go into book two, it takes four or five specific characters and sends them out on a mission into the world because the inn is under attack, but not directly, not like people charging at it and throwing rocks or trying to burn it, but somebody trying to take over it from within. So Jack has sent these people out into this steampunk reality where they face a coven of 13 witches, a dark mine harboring secrets buried far beneath the earth, radical attackers, animated scarecrows that are slowly but surely stealing people from the town that's close by and using them in, well, we'll just leave that for the folks that read it.
Covenant of the 12 Witches. I love it. So, what are some of the unique challenges the characters face due to the inn's reality shifting nature?
Well, they face challenges just dealing with each other because they don't necessarily all get along, but dealing with the reality shifting nature of the inn itself, you have certain characters that are just for book one, and then one or two stay on, a couple go off and leave the storyline through the rest of the books. And the same with book two in steampunk, book three in cyberpunk, and so on. But the characters that stay in the inn, they have a hard time recognizing that the inn has changed. And when we get to the fourth book, where everything is just kind of collapsing onto itself and breaking down and reforming, they are now looking for ways to repair the inn. They start fighting amongst themselves for who controls the inn because Jack has gone missing into the basement, and then the basement no longer has a door that they can find, and then it does. So they're fighting the very nature of the inn as it drew some people in for one reason, others for another. And they're also realizing the inn is a lot more than they were allowed to perceive before. It's like growing up. When you're a child, you're told certain things. As you become an adult, you realize you weren't lied to, but you weren't given all the information. And
Mhm.
now there's more information. And how do they handle that? And how do they put that together so they don't just break this reality?
So, Mr. Travis, how does the inn's location influence the plot in different stories within the series?
Oh, it definitely sets up what world and what genre I get to play in as an author. The first book being in a fantasy world, it looks like an old inn from a medieval fantasy, something you'd see in Wheel of Time or Lord of the Rings. And then when you go to steampunk, it's a little more gothic or Victorian or Old West. And as we go to cyberpunk world, it looks like a warehouse rave club with a lot of metal and burnished chrome and that sort of thing, a lot of neons. Um, and then once we get to the fourth book, it's a broken ruin that the whole thing just collapses and it starts out again as a tent on four poles and then it starts building itself around the characters within. So, depending where it goes, it reshapes itself. It will pull certain people in to do the job it needs done, and Jack thinks he's doing it. But as we read this series, we have to question, is Jack doing it, or is somebody manipulating the guy who runs the inn to do something else?
So, speaking of Jack, what motivates Jack Tucker to manage an inn that transcends dimensions?
See, I love that question too, because this is just something Jack is doing. But as we hit book four, which is the final book in this omnibus, this is four books put together, and that's called The Once and Future Jack, we dig into the internal workings of Jack. And some readers have suggested half the book takes place within Jack's own mind. As he asks that very question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing it to help people? Am I being selfish? Am I manipulating? So that very question is the theme across all four books, but it's really focused on in book four. But Jack thought he was a nice guy and he was doing the right thing and helping people. But that's all pulled into question in book four.
Spoilers. So, how do the diverse patrons of the inn contribute to the development of the main narrative?
That's an interesting question too, because they definitely do. Um, in a lot of ways, they are the building blocks of the inn itself. Some are temporary, as things are in your own home. Other things are essential to keeping your home up and functional. The same way having running water or electricity or a favorite family pet. So these characters, they come in, they influence the next set of adventurers or characters that come into the inn. They have running roles within the inn. There are some people who are regulars there who never go out of the inn. They never go on these adventures. They sit there recording the people who come and go. And in some cases, technology, other cases, just writing it down with a quill and a piece of parchment. So the characters influence the development of the inn as much as the inn influences the development of the characters. It's almost a symbiotic relationship, especially for the ones that get to stay long term, more than just one mission, one adventure, one quest.
I like that. Symbiosis. So, in
Hmm.
what ways do characters like Calamity Sam, Plains Jane, Tawny Tiffany, and Airhorn Boborn reflect or subvert the traditional genre archetypes?
They are a parody of traditional archetypes. When we're looking, and I will be narrating the audio book sometime in the next couple months and putting that out also. So a lot of these characters were based off other characters or archetypes. For example, Calamity Sam is amazingly similar to Yosemite Sam from Looney Tunes
Hmm.
in attitude, in temper, and in skill set. You might also see people representing other characters within movies or books, but they are a parody of that, as well as their own character. So, with these four, you have almost the physical muscle, the mental acuity, the heart and soul, and the glue that keeps them together. So, as they struggle against each other, it's like having It's like having a big ball of twine. As you try to unknot it and unroll it, the more pressure you put on it, the tighter they come together. And the same with these characters.
Interesting indeed. So, how do the interactions between characters from different realities create tension or harmony within the story?
Oh, lots of different points of view. When you have somebody from a cyberpunk, and of course, something has masked how they perceive each other. So, somebody from a cyberpunk reality looking at somebody from a fantasy reality, they know they're different. They know they're a bit odd or weird and don't fit into what that person knows on their own place that they come from. But they can't look at that and go, that's a barbarian draped in furs and carrying a huge axe. They just know it's a muscly, beefy guy who's probably not as smart as them. So something in the inn makes them perceive the other people there, as well as the change in the environment when it changes from reality to reality, as almost a blurred understanding of reality. You know how when you go to the same place every day, whether it's your job, school, or wherever, some things just blend into the background. If it's your job, maybe you don't notice the little knickknacks and toys somebody else has on their desk, or you don't notice that the water fountain that you never use is on that wall. You know it's there, you've come to ignore it. And the same with characters from different realities. They've just assimilated it, but there should be an initial shock when they see each other. So when we get to the point that book four rolls around, these things definitely come into play because the inn is breaking down. So those veils it put across, so nobody seemed too odd to anyone else, those are breaking down also.
Certainly. So, Mr. Travis, what character development arcs are most prominent throughout the series?
Character arcs like specific characters or themes?
Both, if you can.
Absolutely. There is one old man who sits at the
Mhm.
bar and smokes his pipe and grumbles and grouches and drinks his booze. And he's just a crotchety old man, and he's in a long overcoat and a beat up fedora hat. And he seems so useless and just cranky at the world. But his arc, as we go along, becomes more and more important and more focused. And we see how, to some people, he's a nemesis. He's the challenging figure to them. To others, he's a mentor. To yet other groups, they didn't even really give him a thought. He wasn't important to them because he just sat there and complained about things. With themes, there's a lot of self discovery and especially realizing nobody is one thing. We all have layers, we all have different skills or personality things that are useful in different times and places.
So, Mr. Travis, what will be your advice for those people out there who want to write their novel?
Well, that advice is very simple and often heard: write and read. To
Mm.
learn what to do, you have to read. Even if you don't study the technicals of it, just by absorbing things from other authors that you appreciate or don't, you're going to learn what to do or perhaps what not to do. And I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to read anything while I'm writing it because I'm going to just copy their book. No, you're not. That kind of stuff, you have to decide to copy their book. But you can be inspired by it, get ideas, but your book will not be theirs. And the other thing is write every day. If you want to lose weight, you check your calories every day. If you want to build muscle and work out, you do it every day. If you want to learn how to play a musical instrument, sit down with it every day. It doesn't have to be for 6 or 8 hours, it could be for 1 hour, whatever you can spare. And for those of you that ever say, I don't have time for that, how long did you spend watching YouTube or television or scrolling on your phone? You probably did have time. You just used it to
Certainly.
do something else. Yes, go on.
Certainly, Mr. Travis. So, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
I've recently decided to treat it as a hobby again because I had been going so intensely at it. I was creating stressors for myself, but this is something I love, it's something I enjoy. So, my short term goal is to relax and enjoy it all over again. The long term goal is, first and foremost, that same thing: keep loving what I'm doing. Now, that might mean I write a book in a month and then there's an editing process, or it might mean it takes me 6 or 8 months. But I'm going to write what I love. I'm going to make sure it's as perfect as I can get it, and then I'm going to let it go and move on to the next thing. So I'd love to be on any bestseller list ever, always again, but I just love what I'm doing. So anything that comes with success, it's secondary to just having a great time and loving giving these stories to other people.
Certainly. And good luck to your goals, Mr. Travis. And
Thank
you
you.
have the passion to write. Please write, 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 and share to the world. Stop procrastinating. So, Mr. Travis, what narrative techniques did you use to manage the complex, non-linear storytelling inherent in a time traveling setting?
Point of view. Climbing into one character's head per scene or per chapter so we could get different points of view. So I can give my readers more information than any one character has. So the reader is getting a lot of information, a lot of overview through each person's eyes. And of course, those points of view from different characters, they have their own prejudice and hopes and fears, and they're clouded by those. So they only see part of the picture. But with all the pieces, the reader gets to see it all. And that's something I love doing, especially when you have two characters and in one chapter you're doing one point of view, the next chapter you're doing something else. Is you can see how they feel about each other without the other character ever finding out.
So, Mr. Travis, how did you use descriptive language to differentiate between the various worlds and realities visited?
One thing my readers say is they love my description. They feel like they're there. So description is something very important to me. Um, you can describe the trees and the buildings and the people, but getting people to feel that mood makes a difference. Makes a huge difference in a reader's experience, especially if you don't want to go on like, and I'm not knocking J.R.R. Tolkien, but let's face it, he can get a bit wordy in his description sometimes. And I want to give that level of depth into the scene, into the feel, into the mood without taking up 10 pages. Let's take up 5 or 6 paragraphs instead. So what I try to do is try to hit all 5 senses whenever I can. Um, Everybody describes what people see, but what about what they hear? What about when they feel the leaves in the wind in the autumn drifting across their ankles and bumping into their boots? What about that clammy mist coming in off the moors and wrapping them like a wet, cold blanket? What about that taste of sulfur in the air when you're near a volcano as you start to sweat and you can feel it trickling down your face? So you can cover, feel, and smell and taste. And fun fact, smell is the strongest of our five base senses attached to memory. So if you can trigger a reader's sense of smell where they're like, I've smelled that, I know that, it really helps attach them to that moment and give them more than just, oh, I see trees and this and that. They're now feeling things. And they are hopefully by that point sunk into the scene. You know that beautiful moment, Daniel, when you're reading a book and you forget that you're reading. You're just now
Yes.
in the book and moving forward. There's nothing like getting a reader to that point.
Beautifully articulated, Mr.
Thank you.
Travis. Beautifully well said. So, in what ways are humor and satire employed to address serious themes within the series?
There are some characters that are just comic relief to break the tension, but there are other characters. Humor is how they handle things, which I'm that way myself. I quite often make jokes at times I probably shouldn't. So to have characters that do the same thing, and in some cases when you use humor, it comes off as so awkward when it's used in the wrong situation that it can increase the tension instead of lessen it. And using that humor can help raise or lower that tension level depending what you want your reader to experience and be going through with the characters. But it also shows the mood and feel that one character has for other characters. So to make fun or tease another character, maybe it shows they're friends, or maybe it shows they really don't like each other and he's making fun of them. So depending on the book and the character, I use it in all that ways. There's some that are just they're cut ups. They're going to make all the jokes they can. And there's others that are just sarcastic and a little snotty, and they're going to say the wrong thing at the right time to make one of the other characters react and turn red and get angry. And it's fun. It's so fun to have
Yeah.
them react to each other, especially when there's humor where you're hoping, knowing your reader is probably laughing at that point. But now it's created one more problem or one more challenge.
So, Mr. Travis, how does the dialogue reflect the diverse backgrounds and time periods of the characters?
There have been some authors out there, very famous authors. I believe even Stephen King has said, you should be able to take out all your dialogue tags. He said, she said, he replied, she asked, and
Excuse me.
still know which character is speaking just by the way the character speaks. And that's something I definitely try to draw on, give them a verbal tick. For example, Calamity Sam might say, "Ooh, I hate that dang nabbit marmot," and written on the page, where of course you don't want to write too much of an accent into anything because it gets hard to read. It will pull you out of the story if you do it too much, too hard. But it's very different from Tawny Tiffany that speaks very proper, and she is quick and to the point and serious. Whereas plain Jane, she is just wild and happy to be with her horse and running around. Calamity Sam, you're a hoot. So they have different dialects, different speeds, different moods that hopefully on the written page you portray through dialogue tags. Like Calamity Sam stomped his foot and said, or Plains Jane waved her hands excitedly as she spoke. And hopefully, all these things give them a very unique voice from their background, from their attitude, from their reaction to each other. And it makes something that, I don't know, just creates a special situation for someone.
Certainly. So, Mr. Travis, to wrap up our discussion for today, what role do foreshadowing the suspense play in maintaining reader engagement throughout the series?
Super important. Um, in each book leading up to the fourth one, as you have these characters going on their little quests or missions, there's something deeper and darker there. There's something beyond. There's hints of more. And then you break away from their little quest to go back to the inn where the others are watching, the ones that remain in the inn are watching them like it's a movie on a sheet on the wall or a monitor, depending what era they're in. And of course, you have the people that have been to other realities comparing notes from their own points of view. So, hey, what's going on with that? Don't they notice that? So, there's definitely a lot of foreshadowing going on. And as a reader, I love foreshadowing. I love it when somebody goes, here's a hook with some bait on it. I'm going to drop it in the water and see if I can reel you in and just keep you going. So it's something I work very hard at making sure I have in these books and anything I write, because to me it's a delightful. It's like seasoning on your favorite meal. If you took all that seasoning out, still a good meal, but it's not the same. So
Yes.
using the right spices to make people come back for another bite, it makes all the difference.
Mr. Travis Sevart, thank you so much for sharing your books to the world. And we are looking forward for more books to come. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Absolutely. If you guys just look for TravisSivart.com or TravisISivart.com, you're going to find all my books there. 44 books of self help, science fiction, fantasy, nonfiction, as well as a bunch of other stuff I do also. So check me out there. I'm on all your favorite retailers, whether it's Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or your local bookstore. If you don't find it, just request it, or in any of your local libraries worldwide, and you're going to find me.
Yes, worldwide people where books are sold. So, people, let's support Mr. Travis because if you support him, as I said, more empowering books to come. So, Mr. Travis, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's been a pleasure being here on Books 101 Review.
Modicon people, see you soon.